Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, Martino Puccio. And you're probably also watching this on Wayne Girard's YouTube channel as well. We're happy to get back together to talk about Milan and Roma for this weekend. Not a great week for the both of us in terms of clubs, but Wayne, just want to say hello first. Happy New Year to you and everybody else. I haven't really broadcasted on the channel because of work lately, but how are you and how's everything been?
I'm great, man. I am looking forward to this, but also a little bit afraid on a personal level. Things are good, man. You can see I got this nice little new Roma sweater. It's very comfortable.
ASMR mic going on right now with the volume level too. So yeah, it's all big upgrades for you,
Yeah,
right?
it's step by step. You inspired me last year, and I was like, I gotta really do this.
I know, but like your lighting is better. My lighting is horrific. It's probably my background, but I try my best with this. I look pale as a ghost. But yeah, Milan Roma. I mean, like we were saying, really rough week for both sides, both eliminated from Coppa Italia. You guys losing to your actual bitter rivals and us losing to our pseudo rivals and Atalanta, who been like a better bogey team for us than Sassuolo is, and I say like better as in like they've done better on all facets. Um, but yeah, really disappointing from Milan, Roma as well. I know that one's just a little different. I think there's so many more issues with Roma on many different levels. Milan's are primarily Pioli seems like a dead man walking. I guess there's parallels with Mourinho seems like a dead man walking, but one is one of the greatest managers of all time, and one is a manager who has won one trophy as a manager. So I think, and funnily enough, that's the amount that Mourinho has won at Roma. But we can go back to this first matchup. In all honesty, the scoreline does not reflect what that game was. For the large majority of it, Milan did dominate until Tomori got a silly second yellow card and really just kind of allowed Roma to have some breathing room there. I think it was El Shaarawy who scored, or maybe drawing a blank on who scored the goal for you guys. But it was really just one of those games where Roma would have been very fortunate to come away with a draw at that point at the Olimpico. It was a huge win for Milan, considering in hindsight of going in there and winning a match like that, because Mourinho's side is very difficult. Was he also suspended for that one too, or no?
He
Because I
may have
think
been. I'm losing track at this point. It's like half the games the manager's not there,
I
and
think his
it's
suspension was
frustrating.
like carried over, but he might have been on the touchline. Either way,
It was Spinazzola in the 90th,
That's what it was.
92nd,
That's what he
90
was. He
plus
was still
2.
looking good. I really feel unfortunate for him in his situation, as you mentioned. I think you tweeted it out sometime this week about ever since that Achilles injury at the Euro, it's been a real downhill turn for him in his career, which is really disappointing because, again, like we all said, on track to win player of that tournament if he
Yeah,
does not get hurt. Um, but with that, Roma and Lukaku, I think, came on as a substitute, or he wasn't even fit enough at the time. He's been really your staple. And I have a tweet almost every single week about Roma that every single match for you guys feels the same. It feels like there's some chaos going on, multiple yellow cards. Either Dybala or Lukaku score a goal, whether it's a penalty, whether it's an open play goal, and it's usually later on in the game. We know how great you guys are come the end of matches, and that's what we saw in this reverse fixture last year, where Milan were up 2-0 at San Siro, and you guys pretty much put us in that downward spiral that had us finish technically fifth last season. So Lukaku's been great for what you got him for, I think, at this point. But overall, what are your real vibes at this point? Like it's Europa League is still alive, but you're facing Feyenoord, and then you also have Serie A to hopefully get top four. So, what are your kind of overall vibes since that match?
my feeling's been sad, to be honest with you. Not to come on your stream and cry, but
No, you're
but I
fine.
mean, it's frustrating. I don't even want to say because if you're not a Roma fan right now, I think it's difficult to fully comprehend and to put it into context. So let me play this back for you. If we look back to 2017, Roma almost gets in the Champions League final, and it's due to a dubious referee error that prevents them. And then there's years in between that where the team could have made serious progress. They could have qualified for the Champions League and added year by year. And now I reflect and I look at a team last season, less than a year ago, that was really put in such a tough spot. Another refereeing error goes to penalties. Unfortunately, it's a player I very much love, but that the rest of Serie A hates in Gianluca Mancini. He gets an own goal and misses the penalty. That was such a rough day for him. But if that penalty was called, chances are Dybala converts it. The chances are Roma's back in the Champions League. The chances are Roma's players improve. And now I look at a team that what's the date? It's January 12th. And
Mm.
I see such a regression. I see a team that's gotten older where its stars who are the most played do not perform on average. Okay, yeah, you could look at Dybala, but like Lorenzo Pellegrini, and that's a shame. Spinazzola.
Yeah, so I'm very curious about that one. I know you're going through the whole thing. I don't want to cut you off, but Pellegrini, I think, has been the biggest victim of this Mourinho system. Obviously, onus is always on players as well.
Mhm.
And we all know Mourinho will let people know that by his recent quotes. But what do you think it is? Because I think he's so much better as a naturalized 10. That's not necessarily always been the position with Mourinho, I feel. He's been more wide, a little bit deeper at times too. Like what gives? Like what is the best solution to get him back on track?
It's definitely not where he is now. So he plays essentially as a winger, as a third forward, or like part of a trident. He plays on the three.
Yeah.
He collapses into almost like an Ancelotti Christmas tree formation, which was much more rigid when he was at Milan, right? I forget an example of one of those wingers that he used, but they sit a lot deeper. Pellegrini is not really that type of player. He's either got to be, like you said, like a 10, a bit more central in the play, or in my opinion, it's got to be more like a box to box, like how he was at Sassuolo. But I don't think he has the legs for that anymore. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
I think that positioning has passed him as the years have gone on. And look, he's not old by any means, but those legs and the time,
Yeah,
it
for
gets
him to
under
age
you
well. Yeah, yeah.
for sure. So now I can't truly understand what his best position is, because I don't see one obvious skill set. I don't see anything that he's particularly good at. And that's a shame, because when he plays with the Azzurri, he plays very well. It seems like his morale is up. So I think that there's something mentally going on with him. Perhaps there's something even off the field that I'm not aware of, that
Mm,
Romanisti are not aware of. And like you mentioned, he's a victim of Mourinho's play. That could be true too. That
yeah.
he's not meant for this, because the way that Di Francesco played at Sassuolo, which was his shining years, is the polar opposite of the way that Jose plays. And it's not that it's more disciplined, because Di Francesco's mechanisms were very disciplined. They were quite intricate, the way that even De Zerbi's are today.
Mm,
I would say a touch more than Dionisi. So on top of that, the way that he plays, I don't think is conducive to his manager. And I think that's a crux of the issue, is I don't think Jose is quote unquote past it. I think that the players that he has do not match up with the way that he knows how to play best. That to me is the biggest issue right now. I'm not sure if that seems fair when you look at, well, you could say, okay, the manager should have done better. Look at the wages, look at the players they brought in. But I think it's overall a quality issue. And on top of that, when you have that quality issue and you're not a great player, you're not even slightly under
mhm.
great, it's very hard to get away with the way that Mourinho wants to play.
Yeah, I there's so many different things with it. I think he's been really abysmal in Serie A as a manager. Since his return. I just think I think it's a great job for the attitude that he brings for the team. I think the way you guys rallied late into matches
That's
too.
what Roma needed. That's his most essential
And
entity.
and but unfortunately, the transfer strategy for me, in my opinion, is disgusting. I think it's awful. I don't think there's any direction. And this is probably why Pinto's on his way out. There's rumors of Ricky Masada. I want Ricky Masada back there. I think it would be an incredible hire for you guys. And I think the philosophy that he implemented at Milan specifically is exactly what Roma need now. It's getting in younger players that are talented, probably on the low and cheap, instead of, I understand you're trying to make it. You have Mourinho, you're trying to aim higher. The ambition's great. The ambition's always great. But here's the thing. So is the Chinese ownership at Milan. Ambition doesn't always go to competence. I think that moves like Renato Sanchez and Paredes, and we talked about this prior to the season starting too, there's a lot of risk involved in these moves. And a lot of
Way
it
too much
has
risk.
backfired.
Way too
And
much risk that I don't agree with.
yeah, and that's a problem because when Roma, like you mentioned, have to make Champions League, you need stability. You need reliability. You don't go after players like that. It's one thing when Dybala is injury prone and having issues staying on the field. Dybala produces, at least when he's even on the pitch, and he's a difference maker. He's picked up so many points for you guys. Even moves like Rudi Patricio. Unfortunately, an absolute disaster of a move. Been one of the worst goalkeepers. And again, points like that add up over time over the course of the season. And in one score, and Roma play a ton of one score games. So a lot of times it's been positioning. It's been the guy can't even just block a shot in general. I understand the frustration. My whole family goes through it. I watch it. And just even as a neutral spectator, even if I do have a soft spot, I can't stand watching it sometimes because you're just like, we saw what was happening in the 2010s. And I don't care if there wasn't a trophy to kind of validate what was happening then. That was a real plan. That was a really great team.
Yeah,
And sometimes
that
you
was a
just
great
run
team.
into a juggernaut like Juve who has an empty, endless pockets. That's really hard to compete with. And anybody who knows what's going on, I think Roma, you guys were definitely like tons of Serie A clubs got penalized for FFP. But if there was a poster boy club for who was like, we're making an example out of you in the rules, I would say it's Roma. I can't think of anyone that's close. I know Milan got kicked out, but still, talk about a team that had to constantly sell top players just to maybe stay afloat. And I know you have to go back to that because it does trickle down over time. It does matter.
It does. It's debilitating. It comes back to the bigger issue, which is for a decade, Palotto worked to get a stadium before
Like
eventually
everybody else, yeah.
eventually giving up. And the issue is that if you can't have your stadium, you cannot collect your match day revenue to the nines as much as you would hope to. If you can't do that, you can't mirror yourself like an EPL team. You can't get your money up. Your spectacle is not as good. Your fan experience is not as good. You can't collect the same way. But then on top of that, your equity is lower. Your balance, your final budget is lower. And when you are constrained by FFP, it's like this terrible expired meat pie that you have to eat every day, and it just makes me sick. It's I don't know where I came up with that meat pie reference. It's disgusting, but it's just so it just drives me bonkers because it's like picking on the kid who's handicapped in the schoolyard. It's so baffling that FFP makes this
FFP picks
example.
clubs when they're down. They don't
Sure.
uplift clubs like it's supposedly supposed to.
No.
How many times people say in theory FFP sounds great, but when it's applied, like for example, it's
The
the
related
same thing as
entities.
like a bank charging you a fee when you're late on your payment. They clearly don't have the money. Why are you charging them?
And the teams who
Okay,
get
how
away
are they
with
supposed
it,
to pay for it? Hmm?
Martino, the teams who get away with it are using related entities. Look at Abu
Yes.
Dhabi's relationship with Manchester City and how they've been able to fund
I
giving.
think
Well,
PSG is the most grotesque out of
yeah,
all.
it's
Because at
the
least
same
City
company.
can hide behind the fact like, hey, we have Premier League money, we are very rich as well. But PSG, as everybody knows, right? Just everybody in both of these fan bases has a very good understanding of FFP. I think Premier League fan bases don't, and that's why they fail to understand certain things. But the idea is to prevent bankruptcy in 3-year rolling periods that you're supposed to be breaking a profit. If anybody knows and watch this
Killing
sport
us.
around the year 2010, when they're poaching all of Serie A and buying all of these players for record fees, you're supposed to have the income to reflect that. Ligue 1 does not have financial stability. It's not great. Every other team in the league has to sell off players on a consistent basis. This team comes in and makes up some fake sponsorship, right? Where
Correct.
look, they could just say like, oh yeah, look, Santa Claus, it's owned by our owners. Yeah, they're gonna pay us 50 million a year for this.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Where is that coming
And
from?
then
And
then
of
on
course
top of
they're
that,
gonna
Martino,
empty it into their own club to raise their revenue. It was a bullshit loophole that they got away with. And even when City, for example, right, gets away on a technicality when they get a 2-year suspension from the Champions League, that they go to the appeals court and then they're like, oh yeah, nothing's going to happen. You just get a slap on the wrist fine. Where now the Premier League themselves have to go after these clubs in order to put in some discipline. But even then it's like Forest, it's like Everton, and excuse me, whatever the third club is now, Newcastle coming in with this. They're not even, no one's getting punished that should be.
No.
And by the way, even if you go years back, Real Madrid took hundreds of millions of loans out from banks when that country was in desperation, where the unemployment
Yeah.
rate was near 25%, and we're giving out $100 million loans to football clubs that should be self-sustaining. Now,
Yeah,
Real Madrid is a different monster when we talk about this stuff, but I'm sorry, they don't give a shit about a level playing field. We all know it. And even FIGC, to their extent, don't even help their own league, and especially the Italian government. Because how long have we been talking simultaneously about Roma, Milan, and Inter trying to build their own stadium?
So if Roma cannot get around this FFP, right? Then the policy, to go back to what you were saying, the policy of getting players in on free transfers who are high quality, but there's
Yeah.
a reason they're on a free. Okay, Thuram is the exception. Amazing signing.
Mm,
Let's disregard the cameo appearance there of an excellent striker being on a free for other circumstances. But
mm,
Roma goes after these expired contracts, players on a free, and gets loanees in. Personally, I would have went young. I would have been honest with the fan base. I know you're a Devils fan. I don't know why. No, I'm kidding. I'm a Rangers
it's
fan.
literally just Martin Brodeur is close to Martino. That's it. It's the
Okay.
only reason.
So 6 years ago or 5 years ago, the Rangers go through a rebuilding phase where they say, we're going to stink for a few years, but we're going to invest in youth. We're going to go young. We're going to get a wide range of different skill-setted young players. And in 4 or 5 years from now, we're going to be good. We're going to try to go for the cup.
Mm,
Roma needed to do that. They needed to tell their fan base. They needed to be honest. But instead, they went with this Hollywood approach of signing big names, big
yeah.
contracts. And then I suppose definitely the ultimate idea was use those players to leverage you back into the Champions League, then start to build something from there, is the only thing that I could think of. I don't agree with it. I never agree with that type of idea
Very
because
similar to Milan in 2017, except like they did just spend 250 million that wasn't even theirs. So like they were just going for the big names and like, yeah, we're risking it all, rolling $250 million to get back into the Champions League. Basically the same concept, but yours was obviously a different path.
a similar concept and everything, even as I read Pinto's conference, his article on The Athletic, everything seemed to be opportunistic. Not that it fit the game plan, not that Roma want to play like this, we're going to hire that manager.
Yeah.
We need this player, we're going to look just for that category, that echelon of type of player. Instead, they saw opportunities. Lukaku was an opportunity. Yeah, an excellent one. Dybala was. Mourinho was. He just sent a message. It wasn't that, hey, we're looking to play this way. We want to see if you can come over. We're going to build something for 10 years. We're going to establish an ethos of this club from the first team all the way down to Primavera. That's what I want to hear. That's what I want them to do. I really, Martino,
For a
I am
club with a
dying.
good youth system too, who has produced some pretty decent talent. So
Italy's best. One who's won the Primavera, I believe, the most times out of any club.
yeah, they're always
And
really
I
good.
tell you, man, I'm dying to work for this club. I'm dying to get on the inside
Just an
and
application.
help them figure this out from a footballing point of view. And now I see Primavera captain Cherubini. He joins Juventus next gen. It doesn't make
I mean,
sense to
we
me.
even poached your Primavera director. The name's escaping me. But the fact that like Milan are taking someone like that, and again, we took your director in the past as well, in Masada.
Yeah,
Like it's letting the wrong people out the door. And I know, and
right.
I always, it's not that I give excuses for new owners. I like to give new owners time. Okay, so like the situation taking over from Palota, like you mentioned, that's not easy. That's not an overnight fix.
No.
Compounded by the fact we haven't even mentioned COVID, by the way. So that's a totally different beast than what that did. Ultimately, I do see Pinto and Mourinho out the door this summer. I think this is their final ride. I think best case scenario is obviously if Roma win Europa League or somehow manage top four, which is still not completely out of the question. I think Napoli are probably, I think because Napoli was so high up last year and where they're at now, I think that's even more difficult to overcome and get back into top four as opposed to like where Roma's at right now. It's really like, can this guy's legs not fall off the bone? Because or the meat of falling off the bone. I always just think about that meme of where those barbecue grillers or whatever the name are for them. They just drop the meat off the bone and it's just like a clean break off. That's what it feels like Dybala's legs are like right now. I don't think he has much time left at this level in Europe. It could be as soon as this season. It could be one more year. He's maybe playing on Sunday. So if Dybala plays, how are you feeling about heading into this match into San Siro? Because this is a good time to play Milan with their defensive issues.
Significantly better. Dybala, when he is on the pitch, is usually the best one on the pitch. Roma are a completely different team without him. They create significantly less. He is the creator. Without him, it comes back to like kickball. Get it up the pitch, hope for the best, hope that your center forward, whether it's Lukaku or if it's Belotti or even Azmoun, just try to get it up to them. Hopefully they play it off of one another. Perhaps even one of the wing backs sneak through, and that's the MO. It's as basic as that. I know I want to like tell you that there's this, how do you say, like
Tactical mastermind plan.
Yeah, developed mastermind technique, way of doing things in the final third, but that's just not the truth. It's like I said, I'm sad.
No, I know. Yeah, it's the harsh reality of it all. Maybe the Friedkins take a different direction like this. Some of the rumors sound like it. I think someone like a Palladino could be on the table. I'm not saying Roma's definitely an upgrade over Fiorentina, but I'm not sure Vincenzo Italiano might jump at that job currently for the situation. It might be difficult, but I think there's some options out there and some pretty talented managers. So I think Roma will be okay. I think the most important thing, obviously, is getting a proper director in. So again, yeah, with that, if Dybala for me, it just feels like if Dybala is a maybe and he just got injured in the middle of the week, the way your season goes and the way his career has gone at Roma, he's either going to start and play for 40 minutes or he's just going to come on as a super sub. And that's my guesstimation, is that Dybala is going to try and make some impact off the bench. Because I think if Roma, the way they're going to play this and approach this, even without Mourinho, is just keep this close because we know Milan are going to constantly attack us because our defense is terrible right now. I think Roma, you guys are just going to sit back, play a very physical game, and hope that there's just one opportunity in which Dybala can take a chance or Lukaku can take a chance on a counter-attack as well. We saw how exposed Milan were in the Coppa Italia against Atalanta. So I think there is a hole in Milan's defense that's a makeshift one at this point that Roma can expose. So yeah, I think you have a really good shot there.
I want to see what Zalewski can do. I want to see Zalewski get a bit more forward.
I like his skill set. I think he's just had a real rough go of it. He's also incredibly young. So like to expect consistency from players like that in a really difficult situation is, I don't know. I think it's harsh.
He went from a winger to an outside back.
Players like that.
It's not his. This is not his game. He's playing as an outside back, and he's a winger. He played like that for the Primavera. He plays like that for Poland. So when you peg him in to this box, it's really hard for him to get out of it. I think he's lost his confidence because this style of play doesn't suit him. It doesn't feed into his soul, and he's not a happy player. You could tell. I think he's trying his best, but as we mentioned, Milan's defensive issues right now, if Mourinho takes those reins off just a little bit more, maybe we could see something special.
I think you just got to go for it at this point.
Yeah.
I think this is a fixture you have to. Again, when you drop points or have difficult matches against bottom tier sides, this applies to every club, guess when you have to make up for it? In games like this.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing applies for Milan with the way they're dropping. I know this is, I always enjoy talking about Roma because, again, they're the most fascinating team in this league. They usually are. And fascinating could be a compliment. It could be an insult. To me, I just think it just defines who they are. It's always how this club has been. And they're going to continue to be that way, unfortunately, for the foreseeable future. But with this, these fixtures are always pretty crazy. I know Milan have done a better job and have basically owned Roma in recent years, but there's always that little glimmer of hope in this sport where if you just keep things close, things can turn around. Milan's defense is disgusting. It's exactly why I didn't even think this team could win the title this year. We see how good they are offensively and what they're capable of putting forward. But my goodness, there is no true regista or number 6 that cleans up things defensively like Francesi did for a while. There's no Benacer in this. It's looking like Adley, Reinders, and Ruben Loftus-Cheek as that three-man midfield. Loftus-Cheek was phenomenal in the first match of this
Yeah,
tie between the two teams.
he's a
He was
player.
definitely player of the match before he had to get subbed off because of Tomori's red card. And again, no Tomori, no Kalulu. 87-year-old Simon Kier. Looks like Teo Hernandez at center back. Florenzi is hurt, so he's not going to be facing his former
Teo
club.
Hernandez at center back. Yeah.
So I don't know who we're putting at left back. Alex Jimenez, who you replied to me on my Instagram story about, like, who is that? And
Yeah.
unfortunately got called for a penalty, which actually I don't like to complain about referees, but that one was, I think he actually got the ball, but that was unfortunate for him. But either way, that's what we're looking at. A player making his second match in Serie A at left back, where he's kind of primarily a right back. Calabria is going to be over there on the right side too, who, whatever. We could even see Terracciano, who they just signed from Verona as well. He's played left back a good amount, so we could see if he gets put in there. But yeah, I mean, this is the type of game that Roma could pull a result at. Would you be happy with a draw here, or do you think this is the type of match that you guys have to go in and win?
I think
But
Roma's
I
got to
still
win
think
it.
on the road, a draw is a very nice result.
No, I think there's too much that's happened in the past couple of weeks. Roma's play over the past few months is discouraging. I think there has to be a win. There has to be a statement victory at the San Siro. That's the only way you're going to get the fans to cool down right now. Internally, internationally, the Roma fan base there's a lot of animosity right now. People picking sides, blaming everyone, blaming no one. Mourinho, the players,
And the
and
Mourinho fans you have to worry about. That's a
the
separate fan base
Mourinhoistas.
within the fan base, the fake Roma fans.
Well, the guys who come over as they
Yeah,
follow
they're
their
frauds.
lord.
All of them. I'll say it for you. If they're on your channel, you're frauds if you just have a rooting interest in Mourinho.
Martino says you guys are frauds. You know, I want to hear
I'll
what you have
say
to
it. I
say in
don't
the
care.
comments.
You just I deal with them all the time. It doesn't make a difference to me. So yeah. Continue. Sorry. So just a
So
win.
to me, Martino, it's got to be a win. It's got to be one perhaps that Roma fans can look back on and say, look, they stuck together. Things weren't looking good, but you know what? It's that spirit. It's that embodiment of what it means to be a team. It's going to be a big performance. It's got to be from Mancini, from Paredes. He's got to show up. He's got to turn his brain on. Cristante is going to have to run another marathon. Lukaku's going to have to play like he means it. So it's, oh man, there's a lot on the line for this match, Martino.
Yeah, you see, you just like convince yourself how amped you are. I will say this: I think a draw in which you grab like you did last time at San Siro would be kind of more of an uplifting thing if it was a late last minute sort of like, oh, it's 1-0 to Milan. I mean, again, Milan are a very susceptible team to blowing leads. They've done it multiple times to Lecce, to Napoli, Salernitana. Like it goes on how disgraceful they. Like you've been venting about Roma this whole time. I haven't even said anything bad about Milan because I haven't been able to talk about the Atalanta match. I haven't really been able to talk about much of the recent matches. The Serie A form has been good. I will say that. There have been some positives for Milan, but again, it's Milan. You have to aim higher. And it's just very frustrating to see. And I know a bunch of Milanisti that obviously are on the channel and watch my stuff. Sorry, this has mostly been about Roma today, but that's kind of the reality of this. I think there's actually more on the line for Roma, as funny as it is for Milan's current situation. Again, with Mourinho suspended, I feel like there's just the final thing before predictions. I always find the Mourinho angle so interesting, right? Because there's certain matches when you have Mourinho and you could look at it with devil's advocate with this. If Mourinho was here in San Siro, he loves to beat Milan, right? Because of his history with Inter, and obviously, Roma and Milan they've had their battles over the years. Everybody knows that. And even with that, even if he gets suspended, it feels like the type of game where Roma just rally around that Mourinho and their manager is gone. And then they know they have to step up because that type of presence is not on the sideline. And regardless of what you think of Mourinho's tactics and all that, Mo is still one of the greatest managers of all time. Just the sheer presence of the guy matters. Even if I don't rate the way that his team plays in these situations, there's no denying the type of impact that the guy makes. With that being said, what side of Roma do we see with that? Do we see this Roma that will come in with a lot of energy and grit? I know Mancini is going to do whatever he does like usual, but it's the other
My
guys.
captain.
Yeah, your captain. I get it. We have one guy like that too. He's also playing center back. But yeah. But what do you think this is ultimately going to come down to like that? With the type of energy you bring?
Man, I never trust Giroud. Never trust him. Pulisic, he had a really good game, I think, the
I
first
got it on this.
round. Leao,
Patricio actually made an incredible save that it might have been right at him, but still.
I like Reinders a lot. I think that he's probably the best player in that midfield. But I do want to see what Bove can do. We have our little Eduardo Bove, the new
I like
number
that
8 in
kid.
Rome, he's been torching his competition. He's a real good player. He's going to be an excellent player. He's going to be for the Azzurri. And I think if he's got his legs under him, that could change the dynamic of this match. It's going to be tight, though. I think, man. I don't think that this is going to be a 3-0 for Milan.
Yeah.
It's not going to be, Roma's just not going to handle the match for the entirety. There's going to be a lot of back and forth, and there's going to be a few surprises given Roma's strange circumstances and where they find themselves at in this tumultuousness, this storm that's gathering around them, as well as for Milan. How are they going to play? Are they going to surprise us with some decency, or are they going to make a mess of it in the back? And is that going to allow Roma to control this match?
Yes. I think it's going to be very tight, as you mentioned. But one more thing that you did, and one player that you did want to talk about is Dean from Juve next gen. These kids are freaks. They're incredible. They're dominating Coppa Italia and might single-handedly win that cup. Just a dry loan. We could talk about the player quickly, but this move, how do you make of it? Just 6 months? Like, to me,
What are we doing?
like it's nice for the time being, but like, can you give me 18 months? Can you give me an option? Can you give me something? Is it just like the dry 6 months? It kind of just seems like even if he does perform well and he does have talent, obviously, again, this just kind of seems like that kind of upsetting type of move if it goes well, because in 6 months he's on his way out. It's more like
It's
5 months, 4 or 5
yeah,
months.
yeah. It's like 4.5 months. It's baffling. I don't know why you would ever do a deal with the devil. For Roma fans, Juventus are the devil. So why would you take
Not
their
just Roma fans.
offspring, nurture them, and give them a pat on the back and send them home to daddy? It makes no sense for me. I understand he's a decent player, a decent 18-year-old, but this is not what you do. This is against like the laws of God. I don't know. I don't know what the strategy was here.
Right, yeah, it's just,
I gotta ask
do you
Pinto.
think this plays back into what we were talking about before, the desire to make top 4 and doing anything that they can and accepting a deal that's like, "Yeah, you take our
Wow.
player for 6 months, and if you make Champions League, good for you," but, like, obviously, there's no options for it. Like, I don't see the upside for Roma. I only if unless he makes a significant impact somehow over these next 4.5 months, where he is the reason, one of the main reasons that they make it into the top 4. Who knows? Maybe this will age very well. But with that said, you're making a deal with the devil, and you're helping further produce another young star for them. And the benefit is Roma might get top 4, which always feels like, again, like we were talking about earlier, what every move seems to be, like the driving force behind every move seems to be top 4 Champions
Right.
League. Like, what is the best play for us to get back in there? And this feels like that type of move.
Why not sign Bonucci? Why not go to Brazil
That
and
okay,
try
yeah,
and
and that's a great one. Yeah, go to Brazil too. But like Bonucci, like, why not pay up? I mean, he's been horrific, awful. And he says this is his last go around too. So like, I don't know. I think him and Mancini, like, regardless if they would have gotten yellows or whatever, that would have been the most annoying center back duo in the entire league, or maybe the entire world, to deal with. I think that's something Roma should have just rocked with at that
me
point.
too. just
So, so
just
again,
be a
yeah,
bunch of thugs.
yeah. So instead, you got another Juve center back that
Why
is
not
just,
play why not play an 18-year-old from Roma's Primavera?
I don't know, man. That's it. That's you, and for your followers to answer that question. listen,
We're
this
we're
is
all like we're confused. None of
uh,
us get it.
yeah. Again, unfortunately, you guys are used to this. Um, we'll see what happens. I do wish Roma the best of luck, and out of all the teams that are vying for that top 4 spot, I'd rather see Roma obviously get there. I don't like any of
Think
these
so.
other teams that are like vying for it. I don't want to see Atalanta. I don't want to see Bologna, especially when they sell like half their guys. And Thiago Motta is going to be out the door too.
Yeah,
Like,
they're
nobody
gonna
wants to
finish
see them in there next
12th
year.
next year.
Hell no to Atalanta. Napoli, I mean, come on. Worst title defense ever. Hilarious.
Jokes.
No offense. Actually, yes, offense, because they did that all last year. So I don't really care. I don't know why. But either way, I would like to see Roma with that. And I know some people think I hate Roma. I don't. I'm just a very harsh critic with things, just like I am with my own team. So don't take it personally, guys, on Wayne's channel, please. But yeah, any other stuff that you want to talk about before we head out here?
May the best team win, Martino.
It's gonna be a 0-0 draw. Just you could just watch. But yeah, always love chatting with you, brother. Your
Same.
channel's doing fantastic.
Thank you.
You guys are great followers for Wayne. I see you guys all the time. I try and drop in as best I can on some of Wayne's lives after some of the matches. Maybe you guys go well enough in Europa League. A Milan Roma Europa League final would be hilarious, but I think we both know I probably not. I don't have strong confidence in Milan going deep into the tournament. But yeah, best of luck to you guys. I think top 4 is definitely doable if Dybala's legs don't fall apart. But yeah, I appreciate you so much, guys. Again, for my channel at Wayne in Rome on Twitter. Same goes
YouTube.
for socials as well, or is it just Wayne Girard on the socials?
Yeah, it's Wayne in Rome. I think on YouTube and Twitter, Instagram, it'll come up.
Such a good
One word.
name, man. Such a good name, man. But and again, if you haven't also subscribed to the podcast, if you're interested in Milan podcast whatsoever, that Milan podcast is what it's called. With myself and Matt Santangelo, I believe he's on a bachelor trip this weekend. So
Is
my
he?
guy is enjoying himself in his life. That's why he could not make it today. But he might be calling in for post match come Sunday. So tune in for that, guys. I'm more than likely going live. Wayne, I assume you will probably be going live as well. Or are you going to watch in the city?
I'm gonna be visiting my grandma,
Okay.
so I'm gonna be doing my live on Monday.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So
I'm
tune in
going down
here
to see
on
grandma.
Sunday immediately after the match. Roma fans, you're more than welcome. I don't
Yeah,
really trash
jump
like
on
other
over.
clubs and players like that. I only strongly dislike Inter and Juve to that level. So don't worry, come on by. You could vent as much as you want. I'm used to it with my American sports teams, as Wayne knows. And again, Milanisti, come on by. Obviously, U.S. men's national teams fans as well. Wayne's also American, if you couldn't tell by the accent. So yeah, follow him, follow Santangelo, follow myself and that Milan Pod on Twitter. Other than that, thank you guys so much and see you next time.